Navajo Code Talkers, The Leadership and Legacy of Creating the Unbreakable Code, by Ryan Shearer and Caden Perwitz.
Over the years, Native American code talkers have played a significant role in many wars which involve the United States. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and the Korean War all saw use of these code talker programs, but World War II saw the most use. Out of the many tribes used, one group rose above the rest due to their unbreakable code, the Navajo. They left behind a legacy as one of the most secret and complex code groups in history. The original 29 Navajo Indians offered leadership in the creation of the Unbreakable Code, which saved thousands of American lives in the Pacific theater of the war.
World War II begins. World War II began with the invasion of Poland by Germany in 1939. Great Britain and France quickly declared war on Germany, but the U.S. chose not to become involved militarily. However, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor in December of 1941, the U.S. declared war on Japan, and 3 days later, Germany and Italy declared war on the U.S., launching the country into World War II. The armed forces needed secure codes to be able to transfer battle plans, protect shipments of supplies, and troop transports heading to both Europe and the Pacific to fight against the Axis powers.
In the past, during World War I, the Choctaw language was used as a secret code to do the duties mentioned previously. This was not the method the military wanted to use again. Time, a very critical military element, is needed to encode and decode messages from the codes in use. The most effective and quick method is on-the-spot transmission by voice on telephone or radio. The Navajo code would allow the U.S. to have on-the-spot transmission as the Navajo talked back and forth over the radio.
The U.S. was not the only country to use secret codes. Germany's Enigma machine, a machine that could not only decipher enemy codes, but could also send coded messages, was used during World War II and was later cracked by the British Royal Navy. The Japanese code machine Purple and the Enigma T, a modified version of the commercial Enigma K, were also used during World War II. These code machines had the same concept as the Nazi Enigma K, send coded messages while deciphering enemy messages. Purple was cracked later during the war, along with the Enigma T. The Navajo code was never cracked. In fact, the whole system was a top-secret operation until 1968, in case it needed to be put into use again.
Nobody understands. No one ever broke the code. That means nobody would break the code. See? So that's sad. That's Pitsil. Pitsil.
In 1942, Philip Johnston, a World War I veteran, formulated a plan to use the Navajo language as a secret military code that would never be deciphered by the master Japanese cryptographers. Johnston had lived, with his missionary parents, on the Navajo reservation almost his entire life. He could speak the language and knew that it hadn't yet been written down, and the language had been exposed to very few people outside the reservation.
Johnston presented his idea to Marine Corps Lieutenant General James E. Jones, the Signal Corps Communications Officer. After the presentation, Jones responded with, "In all the history of warfare, that has never been done. No code, no cipher is completely secure from enemy interception." Even though Jones was skeptical about Johnston's idea, Johnston convinced Jones, and the two men set up a date when 4 Navajo would be tested on the speed and accuracy of a practice transmission.
After being given the OK, Johnston returned to Los Angeles, where he began the search for the 4 Navajo men needed for the test. He then returned to Camp Elliott on February 28, 1942, with the required Navajo, who were to be tested in front of a group of skeptical Marine staff officers. The men were sent in pairs to different rooms, and 2 of the Navajo were given a typical military field order, in English, to transmit to the other 2 men in the Navajo language.
When the message was then retranslated back into English by the other 2 men, it proved to be an accurate copy of the order as it was given. The onlooking group of Marines were impressed at the speed and accuracy of the Navajo, and the test was pronounced a complete success. After the test, Major General Clayton Vogel, who was in command of the Amphibious Corps Pacific Fleet, sent the Marine Corps Commandant a request asking for 200 to 400 healthy, English-speaking Navajo men.
Those guys that were in our classroom that didn't come back, we found out that they volunteered.
The Marine Corps responded by saying only 30 were needed, since they didn't know whether the Navajo code would actually work efficiently in battle.
The leadership of the original 29. The 30 newly recruited Navajo Indians were brought to Camp Pendleton in Oceanside, California. There, they went through extremely vigorous combat training, causing one Navajo to drop out. They also had to create the secret code, which meant creating new words for the many different military terms used on the battlefield. Once the words were created, they created a dictionary with all the different words and for what term that word represented.
And the reason it worked so well, even though the code words were up in 600 code words that we all have to remember. And they have to remember it instantly as somebody's start repeating it over the air to write it down.
The 29 weren't only creating the code for themselves, but for the other approximately 350 other Navajo that were recruited throughout World War II.
The 29 Navajo had to memorize the entire dictionary they had just created. If put in a notebook, the Navajo had the risk of discovery by the Japanese on the battlefield and, later, the deciphering of their secret code by their cryptographers. After training, the 29 went into service under the Marine Corps in the Pacific Theater of World War II.
Even though the operation was a success, many high-commanding military officers doubted the plan's efficiency and usefulness. Many people doubted the loyalty of the Navajos, considering the fact that they had gone through years of racism, being forced onto reservations, and other cruel acts forced upon the natives.
They used to come out and distribute bale of hay, for the sheep, horses, and cows. It's a hard, hard life out there at the reservation. But it's something that you have to go through.
This was just one of the concerns of the government and the Marines.
They believed that they might revolt against the United States, causing the Axis powers to gain the upper hand in battle. Even through these terrible acts of racism, the Navajo believed that they had a responsibility to fight for their homeland.
There were many more, including whether the code would be breakable, considering the already high amount of native code talkers participating in the war at the time. Another would be the code talkers' efficiency and usefulness in battle. The Marine Corps needed to see if they would be able to send codes quickly and without error in the heat of the war, and if they could serve as infantrymen and shoot a gun correctly, if needed.
The program also had to be kept a secret to the American people. If word got out about a secret code used by the Navajo, the Axis spies would get a hold of the code and later crack it. This was a fear of the military, because if another code was broken by the Japanese, morale would be at an all-time low for the Americans. The Navajo played a huge role in nearly every significant battle in the Pacific, including Tarawa, Guadalcanal, Peleliu, and Iwo Jima. There were 6 code talkers working for the Marine Corps on Iwo Jima, and they sent and received 800 messages, all without a single error.
The legacy of the code. Many years after the war, the Navajo were recognized for their courage and sacrifice in the war. Their legacy has lived since the uncovering of their secret operation in 1968. The Navajo have gone down in history as one of the most successful and secret code groups to exist.
25 years after the war was over in the Pacific, the United States government uncovered the secrets that the code talkers and the military had kept from the American people. In 1982, President Ronald Reagan gave the code talkers a certificate of recognition and declared August 14th Navajo Code Talkers Day. In 2000, President Bill Clinton signed a law which awarded the Congressional Gold Medal to the original 29 Navajo Code Talkers. In July 2001, President George W. Bush presented the medals to the 4 surviving code talkers at a ceremony held in the Capitol building in Washington, D.C.
In conclusion, the Navajo code talkers played an important role in the outcome of the Pacific Theater of the war, all while leaving a legacy behind as one of the most successful code talker groups in history. The original 29 provided leadership in creating the unbreakable code that would change the outcome of World War II in the Pacific. The U.S. used other native languages such as the Cherokee, which was broken later in the war by the Japanese, as secret codes. Had the Navajo not been recruited as code talkers, the United States' messages would have been intercepted, exposing their plans and possibly leading to a win by the Axis powers in World War II.